Architecture of Fear. And I was worried that somebody would think that that was my commentary on Mother's Day, or I was talking about my mother, and it's not at all. And so I thought I better explain how it is that we came to that topic on Mother's Day. You see, if you've been reading along with the interactive journal, we've been writing for the past 2 weeks about community and all the things that go with it, and the focus is the fear experiences we sometimes have about connecting. And when Reverend Chris Michaels and I were creating this book and we were thinking about where to place our topic focuses, some of them were really easy, like February with St. Valentine's Day, clearly love, and others seemed like a really good match. The month in which Mother's Day is honored seemed to be a good placement for a topic like community and the things that we explore when trying to activate a sense of community in our life. And so if you have been writing along, you may have noticed the focus shifting towards things like safety and trust and vulnerability, because the tricky business of activating a sense of community in life is that it invokes all of these things. Safety and connection and trust and vulnerability, and there may be some fear in moving through all of that. And community is so very important. I find for me in my life, it's in community that I get the opportunity to really build my sense of oneness and belonging, because I get to see myself through the various mirrors of the people all around me, reflecting back to me the things that need to grow and change, the rough edges, the places where it flows. So I really value community. I was remembering an interview I heard on the radio with Joseph Campbell, in which he was asked, what is the value of long-term relationships? And I fully expected him to say the intimacy, the great feelings, and he said something that truly surprised me. He said the value of long-term relationships is the conflict that it allows. And I really got that. And he said something like, it's that in relationship that we develop this opportunity through exposure and trust, this opportunity to work through those things that we can't really get to in just ordinary life situations. Because it's only in relationship that we get to expose our true selves. And it occurred to me, well, that's exactly the same with community. It's in community relationship that I get the opportunity to see my mirror and to figure out those places that need to be figured out. It's the conflict situations that are as valuable as the places where it's the warm feelings of support. I've just been traveling to Bali with members of the community, the Center for Spiritual Living Dallas, as well as members of our community, and it just reminded me about that role of community in working out stuff, because, there we arrived in Bali together, and new people on our best behavior. There we are, showing up on our best behavior, and we're on our best behavior, and we're on our best behavior until we're not. Because it's like fast forward when you're traveling, because all of a sudden traveling takes extra resources and we're tired and we can't manage, and all of a sudden the real you starts to leak out. Do you know what I mean? And then I noticed that that's where the community becomes the container for all of that to take place. And then I remembered how important it is for me to have a place where I can melt down safely. How important it is to have a place where I can work it all out, say the things I wouldn't say anywhere else, and be messy and maybe prickly and maybe unkind, and have it so that it's okay for me to recover from that. And community is that place. And in Bali, community is really, really important. Every single village has a town center where people gather, and in that community experience, everybody knows their role. Like, they get together to talk about the main intersections of life. When somebody makes their transition, people get together. You know what your role is. They know who's going to show up, who's going to bring food to the family, whose job it is to go to the ceremony. It's all really integrated into life. It's community-centric living. And it occurred to me that the United States of America used to be like that, I think. But somehow we've got away from community-centric living. And the problem is that we belong together. We need to feel connected to one another. I think it's where we gain our strength. It's when we're touching other people's lives by caring for them and feeling the caring from them for us. I think that on the inside, our souls know and understand we are one. And then when we separate ourselves from each other and go into isolation, I don't think we do as well. I think what happens is we begin to lose our feeling of our place, maybe even of our purpose. And what might happen is our attention is now looking for some place, and it might shift inwardly, and then I might become self-absorbed, and in my experience that results in depression. I think that when we are not connected or involved in community, it's possible that we begin to live fragmented or half-lives. And I think that shows up as things like loneliness or a deep longing for something we can't describe because we've lost track of it. Can't quite place our finger on it, but it's like that holy longing, the soul's longing for the love that comes through connection to our own. Many cultures have stories inside their cultures, in their traditions, that explain how things came to be this way. You know how it all first started when we knew and understood our oneness and it was all ideal, and then something happened and we lost contact with that along the way and lost our sense of togetherness. And then the stories tell how our healing happens when once again, after the fall, we remember our unity. When we wake up and we remember that, yep, it's in our oneness that we're whole. And it's in that we become able to reconnect the fragmented parts of our beings. You know, like stories like the Garden of Eden story, ancient stories like that. But also just in the modern stories of the history of the United States, it tells the same thing. You know, I'm a fairly new citizen, just a few years old, so I'm loving learning about the history of my country now. I'm learning about things that other people already know. But to me, it's fascinating to go through it. And, for example, I'm learning that in, the 20s and 30s, most people didn't own a car. And they relied on their feet. They walked. Public transportation to get around. And as a result, our homes, our neighborhoods looked different. They were built for that. They were built around central community, kind of like in Bali, where the villages had a central place. In America, there was a time when it was community-centric architecture. And people walked around more in the neighborhoods. We bumped into each other, our children, on the way to school. And you walked to the grocery store. And if you really needed something that wasn't available in your neighborhood, you would have to get public transportation and go to one of the bigger places elsewhere. But people were living in each other's spaces. And so back then, homes had this thing called a porch. Maybe even a yard out front, and that's where children played. And so because that was out front and in each other's space, that's where people connected and knew their neighbors and their neighbors' children, because you interacted with them all the time in the local stores, on the way to school, on the way to church. You lived in each other's space. And then in this modern story of the fall, something happened. Well, one of the many things that happened is that